And welcome back to Sunday Square Off. At a time when there's talk of putting more police officers in schools, the tiny Wilson School District in Phoenix can't afford to keep its school resource officer, so it's resorting to a GoFundMe account to raise enough cash by May. But there are many schools that don't want cops on campus. The argument, they're bad for kids. Chanel Poe has been a member of the Ball School District Governing Board in Phoenix for 5 years. She questions the roles of SROs. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you for having me, Bram.
So when I posted this story on the Wilson School District last week on Twitter, there were several comments that police officers at schools create a pipeline to prison for students of color. Help me understand that.
Well, when you look at the statistics, Bram, and we look at when we have SROs on school campuses, what it does is it dehumanizes our Black and Latino students. With such a small population of African American students, when we look at the disaggregated data, we see a larger amount of them are being suspended from school. When students are suspended from school, especially in low-income areas, a lot of them are going home to no adult supervision, and that can leave the gate open for opportunities for them to come into contact with law enforcement.
So here's my question. I've seen some of the data, and I see the suspension rates, and this is fairly common around the country. What is the connection there to school resource officers? What do they have to do with suspensions?
Well, we have to understand the rules of engagement. Assistant principals are supposed to essentially be the disciplinaries of our students, but when school resource officer steps in, it takes away and puts them into a more criminalized state, and they're often seen going to juvenile detention centers and again being sent home to homes without any adult supervision.
So, and this is something many of us just don't see. You're saying SROs will get involved in a suspension situation in a school? I mean,
we know that students have youthful behaviors, and when those youthful behaviors are in the hands of the SROs, we can see sometimes that they're being put in handcuffs and taken off to juvenile. And we see that more likely with students of color, primarily African American, and also our Native American students.
Does your school's district, the Ball School District, also in Central Phoenix, have you ever had any SROs there?
No, we have not. Not since I've been there, and not as long as I'm there, we're not going to have any SROs. But what we did do is we started asking questions and asking for data broken down by race and also by grade levels, so that we can understand and see what problem that our district does have. And what we're doing is we're working to mitigate that problem by bringing in restorative practices, by implementing peer mediation, also mindfulness training. It's incumbent upon district leaders to really understand our students. A lot of our students are facing adverse childhood experiences. A lot of them are dealing with childhood trauma and bullying, which I believe is one of the root causes to a lot of these issues that we're seeing when it comes to student voices feeling as if they are not being heard in these types of instances.
So we're talking right now in the context of concern about safety at schools, given what just happened in Florida and what has happened at other schools. And there is talk of having police officers, a police presence in the schools. What do you tell parents who have those safety concerns and say, we'd like to have an officer in the school if only to deter those kinds of threats?
I will ask them for some factual data that shows that having SROs in schools actually make the campus a bit safer. Ultimately, we need to get to the root cause of why students feel as if they need to go get a firearm in the first place. We can understand their concerns, but again, violence begets violence, and there is no data that proves that having an SRO on a campus, especially an elementary campus, is going to protect their students from any type of danger or harm. It's really about understanding your students and understanding the community and really coming together so that we can talk about these issues or even behaviors that we see. That's why we should look at getting reports from our bus drivers, reports from our crossing guards who really see the students in a different light that can actually bring context to what they're going through.
So you're talking a whole different approach.
I'm talking about a holistic approach.
All right. Chanel Poe, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.